Hello there, folks. Welcome to my channel again. And this time, we're gonna start the part 2 of the Tailwind CSS series. We'll finish this on this video, and before starting, I'm gonna just list few things. First one is, I know last video didn't had any voice of the video itself. That's a mistake on my end. It won't happen this time. I'll make sure that you'll hear the voice of the one explaining as well. Then there's also no notes attached right now. I'm still organizing the notes, and you'll get the notes by this week. So tune in for that, and I won't take too much of your time. Let's start studying.
Mobile first. Apparently, we developers love dark mode. A recent study on medium.com reveals that more than 70% of software engineers decide to use the dark mode theme for their IDEs. But it's not just the IDEs. We love dark websites too. So let me teach you how to apply styles for different themes like light and dark mode. Tailwind supports dark mode natively. You just have to add the dark keyword before a class. Let me show you. I'll create a div, and this div will have a class equal to bg white, and in there I can say something like dark mode disabled because it's white, right? But now the only thing I have to do is say on dark mode apply a background of black, and with that we have technically enabled our dark mode, but we cannot see the text. So what do we have to do? Well, by default we can make the text black, but on dark mode we can make it white by saying text-white. And with that, our dark mode is working. And the way it knows that I want to have my dark mode enabled is based on system or browser preferences. So
this is a really nice thing to have, truthfully. When we were using just CSS, we had a JavaScript variable of dark, or maybe some way or another CSS variable for dark mode, and whenever that variable is like true or it's enabled or something, then all the styling will be according to the dark mode. But for that we had to do a different CSS style and everything. This gives us the flexibility to do it in the same line, more to say using just few words, which is something that's really awesome. And
So on your operating system or in your browser, you can try to switch to light mode. My eyes hurt. And immediately you'll see that this part also got changed to white. Or if I decide to switch to dark mode, that's much better. This has changed immediately, just by prefixing the dark properties. But now, often in our websites, you'll also have to create your own toggle to allow the weirdos to switch to the light mode. Just kidding, I like using it sometimes too. So
Yeah, I'm an AI, but I'm here to talk apps. Real apps you can build in minutes with Base 44. This finance app.
So to make this work, we'll have to modify the configuration to include a special dark class. There are two ways to toggle dark mode manually. You can use the prefers color scheme and override the dark variant to use your custom selector, or you can use something known as a data attribute to automatically activate the theme. For this demo, I'll go with the toggling dark mode manually approach.
okay,
That allows us to add custom directives in the CSS file just above the theme directive. So let me copy this part right here, and back in our playground, I'll head over to CSS, and I'll add the add custom variant of dark, where .dark and .dark everything turns on the dark mode. If we don't specify this, the theme will automatically adapt based on the user's operating system. Pretty cool, right? You only need to mention this if you want to allow users to switch between the themes on their websites. It's a choice you can give them. So whatever utilities or styles Tailwind provides, just add the dark before them, and you're all set. Those utilities will only take effect when the theme is set to dark. Otherwise, they won't have any impact. Now, I prepared a very quick code example, which I'll give access to somewhere below this lesson or within the GitHub README of this project, where we have a card, and within that card, we have an H3 and a P tag, as well as a button. This button has a manual JavaScript on-click handler, which simply adds a class of dark. This then targets the DOM and applies that class of dark to the browser. So now, if you click it, you can see that we can toggle it on or off, and no longer is our theme based on these system preferences. Rather, we now have an actual toggle that allows us to switch between the different themes. Now, you can also notice there are some weird properties here, like ring 1 or ring slate 900. Heck, there's also a shadow that we added to this element. What are these properties? Well, these are some special utility classes. Shadows allow you to, well, very quickly add a shadow to a specific element. And trust me, I don't want to teach you what each and every single property does. This lesson would be too long and you wouldn't remember any of it. Instead, if you head over to Tailwind CSS, press Command K, and search for any of these properties, you can immediately see what it does. Just click right here, and there we go. Drop Shadow MD, LG, and XL. You can see it visually, and it'll even explain what it does and exactly how it works, alongside with a full reference guide to different possibilities that you have with it. Other than that, if you really want to learn how it works behind the scenes, you can head over to the generated CSS and find it right here. Shadow XL basically applies a box shadow with predefined values. So to recap, if you want to manually toggle on or off the dark theme mode, then you can add this custom variant dark.
Okay, that's good to know. So that's add custom variant dark and dark everything. Oh, that's good.
In dark, and then manually modify it using Java.
So how are we modifying it? Let's see. So we'll add an event listener to that toggle button. Const toggle dark equals document.getElement by ID toggle dark add event listener click function. So what's the function? If document includes dark document element class list remove dark. Okay, so we'll remove dark if it includes it, else we'll add dark and alert. Okay.
JavaScript or React, or if you want to develop for both, but not allow the switch, rather take into the consideration their system preferences, you can just normally say which values you want on the light mode, and then prefix the dark for the same values on the dark mode. Pretty cool, right?
Sure.
Hopefully now you know how you can implement dark themes to make the developers happy.
Yep.
Tailwind makes our life easy, but just how customizable is it? I already told you that you can make everything fully custom. But let's say you want to introduce a new color that isn't present in the default Tailwind CSS theme. You can achieve that in a couple of different ways. So let me go over different methods one by one. First, you can do it inline. Whatever the value is, just put it inside square brackets. Like if you have a p tag with a specific background and padding, and you want to get to a specific text, you can just say text dash, and then within square brackets, define the value. You can see that that value can be any of the millions of colors available for you to choose.
That's something we covered in last video as well. So it's one of the way we can customize our own properties. Like so using braces, anything inside braces will be, how to say, so they will be compiled differently by JWT, just in time JIT compiler of Tailwind, and what it does is it makes its own customized class for us, and then that property will be applied. That's good.
It might be even better to change it like this, because backgrounds are also fully customizable. You can say bg dash, and then simply open up a hexadecimal value, allowing you to choose between any of the available colors. Pretty cool, right? But it's not just for colors. You can use it for any utility class. Let's say you want to have custom font sizes or custom paddings. You just do this. P-16 pixels, text-36 pixels, something like that. You can do whatever you want. You already know how to apply custom colors and more. Whenever you want to add something custom or arbitrary, just add the right value within the square brackets. Still, this has some disadvantages. You'll soon notice that this is only for the small tasks. As you add more sections to your app, it simply doesn't make sense to provide custom values for every single piece of text. Now imagine you're using the same color in multiple files, and then your boss or manager or somebody tells you to modify it to something else. Imagine just the number of files and different places where you just have to change a simple value. It's not ideal. So this is the moment where the Tailwind config becomes super relevant. It will enable...
So whenever we work with Tailwind, we get few files. Tailwind libraries are different, but we also get a Tailwind config file. What it has is, it's a file where we can make our own classes, our own customized classes to our own need. So let's say instead of using braces, we make a class named customized text color. Inside we write a CSS line, just as any CSS class. We write color colon red or any color we want, semicolon, and close the braces. And then where we can use that class which we made, customized text color, anywhere in our program, and it will be the just-in-time compiler will accept it and see it as a class.
Enable you to control and organize the entire visual style of your application. The procedure is simple. Simply head over to your CSS file and use something known as Tailwind CSS directives to write any config you want. This is one of the biggest changes that came in Tailwind CSS v4. It completely shifts the approach of configuring your project in a JavaScript file and allows you to configure it directly within CSS. So
you don't need better habits, you need fewer interruptions. You're not underpaid. You're just spending $1,500 a week doing admin work. Think about it.
So how exactly can you do it? Well, just head over into your CSS file and modify the theme directive. For example, let's say you want to add this chestnut color. You can do that very easily by saying --color -chestnut, and you can give it a value of whatever value we used right here. Let's use this one. Oh, we're in CSS, I don't have to wrap it in string signs. That's good to know. And now, if you go back, instead of manually defining the value, you can just say text-chestnut, and you can see that it still uses the same color. Pretty cool, right? So now, if you have to change this value across tens of thousands of files, you only have to change it once. Within the CSS file, if you change the value, it'll completely change everywhere else. So if you check out the
sorry to interrupt, but what he's doing is changing the properties, or what he calls directives. What I was talking about was making a different class for a color, or a different class, just like CSS. So this is even more better than what I just said, making a theme. So you just change a color and make a kind of like a variable named chestnut, which represents a hex color, and then instead of using it as a class, we can use it inside Tailwind normal CSS properties like text. Instead of any other color that's predefined by Tailwind, we use our own color like chestnut, just used, which makes it much more simple. Life is easy.
The theme tab within generated CSS and search for your newly added color. You can see it right here as a single line of code. And as you expected, for this to work, there has to be a specific rule or syntax of what should be configured in which way. For example, colors are defined by prefixing them with --color and then a name, and a custom font can be introduced by something like --font, and then you can define the size. You can read about all of these different namespaces within the Tailwind CSS docs. You can change anything from colors, fonts, text sizes, breakpoints, containers, blurs, animations, and more. But there's another way. in which you can make your custom styling even more reusable. Remember the dark mode example, where we created long styles on a simple tag. This may happen when you're building large applications. Cluttering the layouts with these utilities won't be that good from the clean code perspective. For example, just check out this button. It's a simple button, but has a very long class name, as it has some very cool.
Okay, I just stopped just to see what he used to make these hover effects. So BZ is gradient to R. From purple to 500 to blue to 500. So that's for gradient. Our gradient will go from purple to blue. That's nice. Hover that from purple 600. So when we hover it on it, it will become from purple 600. Hover to blue 600. Focus as outline. None. Okay, so there is no outline. Focus string. Focus string purple 300. Active BZ blue 700. PX. Padding in X is 6, padding in Y is 3. That's normal padding. Okay, when it's active. Rounded, large.
Hover and active effects. No one likes to see such a long line of code for a simple button. And now imagine you have to use this button across 10 different files. That would be a mess. So how can you avoid such cases while still having that flexibility that Tailwind CSS gives you? Well, there are a couple of solutions. First, you could break your layouts into specific components. Instead of writing everything in a single page, you can create a separate component for that button and then just call it in a single line. The second step is to use directives. Remember those base, components, and utilities tabs? Tailwind CSS offers directives for each of these to define specific styles. But what does this mean, base, components, and utilities? Well, these are parts of an approach to structuring and organizing styles using the configuration file method. Base simply applies styles globally across your project.
Okay, so let's write directives. If we use base, it applies globally. That's nice.
Your project. For your elements like H1 tags or P tags, you might want to have a specific style which you want to use across the entire page so you can define how a base heading should look like. There's also the components part, which is used to style specific components or reusable UI elements like cards, footers, and more.
One thing to notice, it starts with layer. So add theme for changing the properties like color, font, and add layer because it makes sense. It's layers of different DOMs. So all of it just components and this then goes on. Okay. Second one was components. It basically says that applies to components. Okay.
And then there's utilities, which are atomic styles for individual properties like margins, paddings, typography, colors, and more. And there's another directive called @apply that inserts Tailwind CSS styles into CSS. We also have the add layer, and using these, we can create custom styles for base, components, and utilities. Let me show you how we can do that by heading over into our CSS, and right below the theme, I'll say add layer, components, and I'll define a card component, within which I will @apply a margin of 10, rounded -LG, as well as a BG white. For now, I'm fine with just these three properties.
Okay, so what he just did is normally in CSS, inside the layer component is something that comes from Tailwind, but the .card is a class, and that class normally we inside the braces for that we use CSS. Okay, so what @apply does is allows us to use the predefined Tailwind classes inside the CSS block, or in um, it allows us to use the predefined Tailwind classes in position of CSS. So while doing CSS, we had to use margin 10 pixel or 10 spacing, depending on how much is it. Same for rounded, we can use border radius of whatever large is, but it applies. But if we add apply, we can also make it much small using Tailwind. That's good to know. Let me just make a note of that. Apply. Tailwind class inside a directive.
Nice. So if we go back to the HTML here and remember our dark mode toggle example, there's a lot of class names right here on this div, such as margin of 10, rounded LG, and BG white. So let's say that we want to take all of these classes. I'll take them and I'll apply them over this card properties, because cards typically have similar margins, rounded corners, backgrounds, paddings, and shadows. So most likely we want to create it as a special layer component of card. And now this would significantly change the way that we ask Tailwind to apply those classes. Instead of mentioning them one by one, you can now simply say card, and this will automatically apply all of those Tailwind utility classes. Pretty cool, right? And you could do that with buttons, H3s, and P tags as well. This was the layer of components, but there's also a layer of base, as I explained. And this allows you to automatically target specific elements, like H1s, where you can say that H1 will, for example, have these properties. So let me copy them. Oh, it's not actually H1, it's an H3 in this case. And I can just say add apply and mention these properties. And we can do a similar thing for the P tag. So I'll take it and define these by applying specific P tag properties. And we can do the same thing for the button even. So let me take these and add them to the button. Of course, don't forget the keyword of apply. We also need semicolons as we're back in CSS. I tend to forget that often. And now back in HTML, check this out. Not only do I not even have to say something like class of H3, I can remove the class entirely, because the H3 by default will get all of these properties applied to it. I can do the same thing with the P tag and even the button. This is pretty amazing, right? You get from a huge mess of inline CSS to everything baked right into your Tailwind CSS configuration. But sometimes these elements will still have to differ a tiny bit, but you might want to make your life a bit easier. So let's say you want to achieve a middle ground. Make your life easier through the Tailwind config, but still not make it always have the default styles. You can do that by defining your own utility styles. By saying add utility, for example, flex center, which is something that we use quite often, you can apply properties of flex, because we need to make it into a flex container, justify dash center, as well as items dash center. This would allow.
Nice thing, really. So instead of, so whenever we do make a div center all the items inside to the center align from horizontal or vertical both, we have to use, in Tailwind we have to use flex, basically saying this piece will be flex. Justify center, saying justify content will be center, and item center means all the items will be aligned to center. So that does the horizontal and vertical centering, which we use pretty much every time, so that, if I may say, but still that utility is really nice, because what it does, or what it's doing is, it's allowing us to make combine few classes into one class for Tailwind, or few utilities into one utility. So flex center and we can apply all these center things like flags, justify center, item center. Which means whenever I say last name flag center, it will apply these properties. Even the flag center itself is nothing in Tailwind. It's like making a variable and assigning some values which will be applied to whenever we use the query. The because we read the program like this.
This would allow you to completely center a specific element within the div. These are 3 different classes, which right now you can apply with just a single one, Flex Center. So now if I give it a class of Flex Center, take a look at this. It applies all of these properties together, and there we go. All of the properties are applied with a single class name. Doesn't look that good, but it gets the job done. That's the magic of it. A lot of people don't realize just how useful these directives are and just complain that a lot of people don't realize just how useful these directives are.
We have theme, we have utility, we have apply. We did 3 of these. We did custom medium to change from dark, shift from dark and light mode. Then there's gradient reference, import and source. Okay. We'll take a look into that. Just make a note. There might be more. I'm just guessing that these are more commonly used if it's mentioned in the video. Reference, if I'm thinking of the same thing which represents, will be a pretty useful case if it works as use ref and
are, and just complain that Tailwind CSS makes their code look messy. Maybe they just want to rant about something on X. And
Step into Wix Studio, the platform for agencies and enterprises. Kick off projects in a workspace that's designed.
anyway, moving on, there's also another way of improving your Tailwind CSS game, and that is to use component libraries like ShadCN. It already comes with a set of predefined components, like buttons for example, that behaves nice, looks nice, and has some default styles. You can very easily grab the code, because it's just that, a button. But behind the scenes, ShadCN will set up Tailwind CSS for you and automatically create different variants of the button you can use. So you can style it further if you want to. So you can use it as a default button by just importing different elements from ShadCN and giving them some variants. But the best thing about it is, if you want to give it a class name and change its color, you can just use native Tailwind here as well by saying class name text-red 500, and it will apply that Tailwind CSS style to an already themed button. Pretty cool, right? It just allows you to do so much more in less time while still keeping everything customizable. Because let's be honest, these are very default looking components. Buttons, breadcrumbs, avatars, aspect ratios, these are super plain and simple. Boring even, right? But the beauty of it, considering that it has been built on top of Tailwind, is that you can add colors and make it yours by completely customizing every single bit of it. Sorry for making your eyes bleed there for a second, but I think you get the idea. Tailwind CSS is super flexible and doesn't require you to just write all the styles in line. It allows you to be as specific as you want by choosing arbitrary values or by defining how smaller or bigger parts of your entire application will look like by default. This was such a cool lesson that I believe not a lot of people cover when talking about Tailwind, and I loved recording it. So if you find it useful, I would appreciate it so much if you could click the Trustpilot link below this lesson and leave a nice review. I'm so close to getting to that 4.9 stars, and together we can make it happen. And like Tyron that bought a couple of our courses and recently landed a massive job in a couple of months, well, you can do that too. Thank you so much. So don't be the guy that rants on X about how Tailwind CSS is not customizable. It is, and you don't have to write everything in line. Now you know that, and you just have to figure out a way that works for you. Great job. Now that you understand what Tailwind is and how it works, I want to teach you a couple of Tailwind CSS tips and tricks. The ones that I struggle with and the ones that most people have no idea about. First, let's explore a couple of special utilities. Did you know that you can change the default accent browser color for elements like checkboxes and radio groups? The only thing you have to do is provide a class of accent and then choose a color which you want to add, which gives you a completely customized look of even the tiniest bits like checkboxes. And usually when building a responsive website, these were the accents. So I'll add a comment right here saying accent. And this was just the first trick of many. So let me show you the second one. It'll be all about fluid texts. So usually when building a responsive website, you have to take care of the text size on different devices. You'll have to do something like this, like change the size on different breakpoints. So it's bigger on larger devices and smaller on smaller devices. But did you know that there's also a custom style approach that you can use here? Something like this. Text min 10 VW and 70 pixels. So how this works is it is entirely fluid. I mean, just check this out. Whereas this first example changed only 2 times. It is fairly big for a long time, and then even bigger. What you can do with this fluid approach is change it every...
Oh, this is something that I wanted to do with my website when I was creating it, but I didn't know that much about Tailwind at that time, so why didn't I do this before? But now, let's see. So to make it fluid, so there should be a pattern here. Min then view with 70 pixels. So it says that minimum is my 10% of the view width. So if we increase the width, it should increase. And the max it will go is still 70 pixels. That's what I'm guessing. Let's just write it down. Text. So it's also customized because we use braces. Then we have width 70 pixels to 70 pixels. And this is a nice utility to have.
Every single pixel that the screen size changes. Pretty amazing, right? Much smoother and more responsive. Instead of relying on the media query, we kind of calculate the value depending on the screen size automatically. The third thing I want to talk about is the file. If you worked with file inputs, you know the pain of styling a default layout. You might need to use a fully custom library or set the input display to none and then create your own. Tricky, isn't it? Thankfully, Tailwind provides a better solution. It looks something like this. You can define a label, and within it, you can define an input. And then the only thing you have to do is use the file prefix, which automatically applies all the customizations to the input. The next step is all about highlights. Let's say you want to override the default blue or other highlight that appears when a user selects a text on the screen. Well, Tailwind CSS gives you a very simple solution to that. Check this out. By default, when you hover, it is blue. But by using a selection property, you can very easily change how it looks like. Now it is green. You simply had to apply a class of BG green. But if you weren't using Tailwind and you wanted to do this with manual CSS, well, you would have to write this kind of messy code. If you weren't using Tailwind and you wanted to this with manual CSS, well, you would have to write this kind of messy code. This makes it so simple to be more creative and do whatever you want. because you have complete control just by writing a few lines of code. Now, another pro tip I want to give you is about writing less JavaScript.
Juggling multiple client sites? Supercharge your productivity with AI made for agencies. Instantly create unique and compelling content.
Well, yeah, if you take the time to learn it well, you can perform so many tasks that are typically done using JavaScript with Tailwind CSS alone. Sounds pretty crazy, right? But think about how often you've made an accordion or relied on a library or states to manage it. Doing something like that with Tailwind is super simple. Check this out. You can use the HTML5 details and summary components, and then apply some kind of an open prefix selector, and it just works by default. Well, this is pretty crazy. You can also modify the color of the caret. Check this out. It is pink. See this thing right here popping in and out, letting me know where my cursor is? Well, that is called a caret, if you didn't know, and you can make it any color you want. And I want to say these were just some examples that shows just how of a unique tool Tailwind works by default. Well, this is pretty crazy. You can also modify the color of the caret. Check this out. It is pink. See this thing right here popping in and out, letting me know where my cursor is? Well, that is called a caret, if you didn't know, and you can make it any color you want. And I want to say these were just some examples that shows just how of a unique tool Tailwind CSS really is. There's even more, like before and active states, styles that only work on certain screen sizes like landscape or portrait, styles for area and screen readers, gradients, animations, and it even lets you apply styles when printing your website. Covering all of these would be another course on its own. So I've put together a reference guide with some of the best tips and tricks to bring you to the pro Tailwind developer. For now, it's completely free and linked below this lesson. So simply grab it while you can and store it somewhere. So the next time you're doing something cool with Tailwind, you can always refer to it. It'll also help with one of the biggest problems that people experience when first diving into Tailwind. And that is, how on earth do you remember all those Tailwind classes? I can't even recall what I wrote 2 minutes ago. Well, let me tell you a little secret. You don't have to memorize every single class. As you keep working with Tailwind, you develop muscle memory. It's like riding a bike or tying your shoes. You'll naturally know which classes to use for different elements. Just keep practicing, and before you know it, Tailwind's classes will become second nature to you. You might wonder how you'll manage to write all of these classes while learning without watching any tutorials, but have no fear. The last pro tip I can give you is to just head over to Tailwind CSS, press Command K, and start typing. Whether you're trying to find a specific CSS property, such as border radius, and you're wondering how it works within Tailwind, it is just a few keystrokes away. I wrote my PDF guide in a similar way too. So if you want to change the text color, super simple. You want to see which colors you have access to? Well, that's here too. Trust me, Tailwind is incredibly intuitive. And in just a few days, you'll be creating UIs like a pro without constantly peeking at the docs. It's all about practice and embracing that creative flow. And on top of that, no matter which editor you use, whether it's VS Code or WebStorm, which is a fully fledged IDE, you can install the Tailwind CSS official extension that will speed up the writing of your Tailwind CSS classes significantly. And if you're using WebStorm, you'll also get an extra edge with features like color previews for your theme and detailed information on each Tailwind CSS utility when you hover over it. So if you want to follow along and see exactly what I'm seeing, as of recently, WebStorm became complete and you've got a solid understanding of Tailwind's core concepts. And you're well on your way to mastering utility-first styling. But we're not stopping there. In true JavaScript mastery style, let's take things to the next level. Next up, the build and deploy section, where you'll bring everything together by developing a stunning Fitness Pro landing page, a real-world project that puts your new Tailwind skills to the test. You'll build a sleek, fully responsive layout, dark mode support, and advanced styling techniques, a polished professional UI ready for production, and of course, we'll deploy it live so you can showcase it on your portfolio. So, if you want to keep going, you can access the full build and deploy section along with structured lessons, interactive quizzes, quizzes, and even